In the sporting world, athletes, coaches, and teams will go to extraordinary lengths to try and get the upper hand. And while some train hard, others resort to foul play to claim a spot on the podium. But once they get caught, it's game over. With that, let's take a look at even more athletes who were caught cheating their way to victory. Crashgate. Some cheats can take just seconds to execute, but as Formula One team Renault discovered, even the most seemingly simple schemes can have disastrous repercussions. On the 14th lap of the Spanish 2008 Grand Prix, Renault racer Nelson Piquet Jr. accidentally smashed into the barrier on the 17th turn. Miraculously, he walked away uninjured, but a safety car was deployed, holding up the racers behind. It gave Nelson's teammate, Fernando Alonso, a fortunate advantage, and he went on to win the race for Renault. Even though it looked like a dangerous stroke of luck, it would eventually transpire that there was something else driving Renault's wondrous win. In 2009, Nelson hit another metaphorical wall when he was axed from the team after failing to score any points during the season. Enraged by the decision, Nelson's father revealed that his son had been ordered to crash by none other than Renault's managing director Flavio Briatore and director of engineering Pat Simmons. These two big bosses had orchestrated Alonso's success by sacrificing young Nelson, threatening to cut him from the team if he didn't go through with it. He was given explicit instructions to crash on the 14th lap at the 17th turn, as there was no crane on that stretch to help remove the car. This would force a safety car at the opportune moment and hand Alonso the win on a silver platter. After a thorough investigation, Renault apologetically admitted to the flagrant race fixing, and the International Automobile Federation banned Briatore and Simmons from the sport. However, the ban was unbelievably overturned by the French courts in 2010, meaning both men were free to return to Formula One by 2013. How agonizingly frustrating is that? Let's relieve some of that stress for a moment. If you think Briatore deserved a harsher punishment, smash that like button. If you think Simmons should steer clear from the sport forever, slam that subscribe button. And if you think neither of them should be allowed near a racetrack ever again, hit both. Marvin Hits. Soccer is often called the beautiful game, even though it's had its share of ugly cheating scandals. Some are famously dramatic, like rolling around on the field like a baby after brief contact. However, others are a little more subtle. Just ask Augsburg FC's Marvin Hits, who was caught playing dirty back in 2015. After a penalty was awarded to Köln FC's striker Anthony Modeste, Hits deliberately dug his studs into the turf of the penalty spot. He swiveled around like a bizarre ballerina and tore up chunks of the turf before heading back to the goal. As Modeste ran at the ball, he suddenly slipped on the sabotaged turf, allowing Hits to make the save that would see Augsburg win the match 1-0. After being picked up by the video ref, the Swiss-born goalkeeper attempted to play down the incident, but later admitted on Twitter that he was in the wrong. The apology was enough to satisfy the officials of the German Football League Bundesliga, but he wasn't let off the hook entirely. Augsburg facility boss Hans Rütter sent Hits a €122 bill to cover the cost of repairing the pitch. While it was hardly a drop in the ocean for the now €1 million a year player, both Hits and Augsburg FC pledged to make a charity donation in lieu of a real fine. Who knew something so wholesome could come out of cheating so badly? Vincenzo Nibali. Thanks to the aforementioned Lance Armstrong, cycling now has a reputation for being filled with like-minded cheaters. However, the punishing uphill climbs and high speeds have led to more inventive methods of cheating that don't involve drugs, as Vincenzo Nibali here is about to demonstrate. The 2014 Tour de France winner was involved in a crash during the 2015 Vuelta a España. After falling well behind the frontrunners, Nibali was suddenly approached by a team car and suffered from a case of what pro cyclists call sticky bottle. This happens when riders return to team cars to retrieve drinks without stopping. But when the handover occurs, the person in the car holds onto the bottle for an extra few seconds, effectively towing the rider along to give them an illegal boost. In Nibali's case, he must have been really thirsty because the team car practically towed him off into the sunset. While many professional cyclists use this tactic subtly, Nibali's obviously free ride, which was hilariously captured by an eye in the sky, got him disqualified. Both he and team director Alexander Schaefer, who was driving the car, received a fine of just €200. Considering it's a practice that almost every cyclist participates in, do you think the judgment was fair, or should Nibali have received harsher punishment for his sticky joyride? Sal Alosi. Some of football's most famous cheating scandals focus on doping, deflated pigskins, and illegal negotiations. But in 2010, New York Jets strength coach Sal Alosi found a new way to cheat in the field. In a game against the Miami Dolphins, Sal went out of his way to trip up Dolphins gunner Nolan Carroll on the sideline during the play. Fortunately, Carroll was uninjured and returned to the game. However, Alosi's noticeable knee caught the attention of CBS sport commentators, who rightfully threw him some well-earned shade.
Watch the knee here being stuck out on purpose to trip up Nolan Carroll. Not sure who that person is, but they should be ashamed of themselves for that type of action. That has no place.
Those words must have hit Alosi hard, as he came forward the next day and apologized for his callous actions. While the NFL tallied up an appropriate punishment, it also emerged that Alosi had ordered inactive Jets players to form a human barricade on the sideline throughout the game. As they stood shoulder to shoulder like a Rockettes kick line, the lineup ultimately made it harder for the opposing team to pass through. With all the unsportsmanlike behavior racked up against him, Alosi was slapped with a fine of $25,000 and was suspended without pay for the rest of the season. He resigned from the Jets in January 2011 and hasn't worked in the NFL since. I guess he may have been a decent person like you or I once, but then he took a gunner to the knee. Manziel. The ex-NFL quarterback Johnny Manziel made headlines recently for cheating on his wife. But if we rewind back to February 2019, his wife, Manziel, also made headlines for cheating. Although also she broke rules, not just vows. The fitness and Instagram model took part in the 2019 Run Like a Diva half marathon, completing the 2-lap course in 1 hour and 58 minutes with no prior training. Considering the average half-marathon time for non-elite female runners is around 2 hours and 24 minutes, this was quite impressive. That was until people took a closer look at her mile split times. She'd hit the 6.4-mile mark in 1 hour and 31 minutes, but had finished the entire 13.1-mile course just 27 minutes later. For this to have been possible, Manziel would have needed to run the final 6.7 miles at an unbelievably speedy pace of 4 minutes a mile. For reference, the women's world record for the fastest mile run was 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and that was just one. So, Manziel would have needed to break that record 6 consecutive times after already having run over 6 miles, and all without any training. While it was obvious that she'd been cutting some corners, she angrily took to Instagram to prove her innocence by posting this picture of the 11-mile marker. So, how could she have taken the photo if she hadn't run the whole course? Despite her defense, online sleuths revealed she'd probably only run the first lap of the 2-lap course, taking photos of every marker along the way. It may have all been a simple mistake of turning left at this point, where she should have turned right to complete the second lap. However, all her bragging on now-deleted social media posts and no hint of an apology has left this fitness model looking like an iconic cheater. Must run in the family, I guess. Romano Fenati. Keeping your cool is an integral part of being a professional athlete, something that motorcyclist Romano Fenati clearly doesn't know anything about. Competing as part of the 2018 San Marino Moto2, Fenati was aggressively overtaken by competitor Stefano Manzi. Enraged by the maneuver, Fenati decided to undertake one of the most stupid and dangerous cheats in sporting history. As they reached speeds of 140 miles per hour, Fenati leant over and pulled the front brake of Manziel's bike. The idiotic scheme could have crashed and killed his opponent, but he clearly thought he could get away with the split-second decision. Fortunately, cameras caught every second of his stupidity. He was immediately disqualified, his racing license was revoked, and his contract with the Marinelli Snipers was terminated. It was such a serious breach of conduct that the Italian justice system even considered putting him on trial for attempted murder. Romano later apologized for his horrendous actions, but very few believed it was sincere. After all, this moron had a history of kicking other competitors' bikes mid-race, and even turning their engines off at the starting line. I think we can all agree he was probably just sorry he got caught. Alessandro Andreoli. As methods of cheating get more and more sophisticated, so does the technology designed to spot them. Something that cyclist Alessandro Andreoli found out the hard way. The 53-year-old came third in an amateur cycling event in Bedizzole, Italy in July 2017. But after he crossed the finish line, he was suddenly flagged by race officials. Without his knowing, they'd been using a brand new weapon in their arsenal against cheating: thermal cameras. With this new tech at their fingertips, officials could easily scan bikes for suspicious-looking heat signatures, indicating if there were hidden electric motors inside the athlete's equipment. Unfortunately, the seat tube of Andreoli's Argon 18 bike lit up on the camera like a Christmas tree, and officials ordered him to bring his bike around for inspection. But before they could disassemble it, Andreoli admitted his guilt and was disqualified from the standings. While this cheat-thwarting tech has been used to successfully level the playing field, it's not accurate enough to prove any foul play for certain. Back in 2016, for example, thermal cameras supposedly caught Slovenian rider Primož Roglič trying to cheat his way through the Strada Bianca race. Hotspots on the thermal images of his bike indicated there was something kicking out a lot of heat in the rear wheel, more than what would be expected from friction alone. Even though his bike was never checked for a hidden motor, the images were broadcast across French television for the nation to judge. Many believed the rider was guilty of mechanical doping, although Roglič strongly denied the allegations. But further suspicions were raised against him. Just the previous month, Roglič had made a suspiciously late bike change during the Giro d'Italia time trial. While he achieved the fastest time out of the group, this change meant his winning bicycle hadn't been tested for a motor then either. Even though the allegations were peddled against him, the thermal images on their own ultimately weren't enough to condemn him of any wrongdoing. But what do you think? Does it really look like Roglič cheated using a hidden motor? And do you guys know of any other stories of athletes cheating? Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching.